Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we made 1 bowl chocolate chip cookies. This video is going to have to be a voiceover because I was trying out a new mic and I didn't think to test a clip to make sure it was picking up before committing to using it for the whole video. So you get a voiceover and we are making pretty much my go-to recipe for chocolate chip cookies. It's minimal ingredients, minimal tools, and pretty quick as well. Alright, so I'm using a plastic bowl. You can also use glass. First thing is going to be 1 stick of butter, and it's going to get melted in the microwave. It's supposed to be just softened, but if it's between softened and melted, you're going to get the same result pretty much. Because we're not doing any creaming, we're not using any beaters or stand mixer. This is just going to be a dump it in the bowl and mix it type of recipe. Okay, so this is what the butter looks like. There was like a glob that was just softened and not fully melted, and that's totally fine. I have the 1 egg separated in a bowl. And then essentially I'm going to do all of the wet ingredients first, and then we're going to do the dry, which I know is going to make some people clutch their pearls because that's kind of entirely backwards. But that's just the way we're doing it. It makes this recipe easy, and I am swearing by it. You'll have to bear with me with the parts where I'm talking with my hands thinking that the microphone is picking me up. I was wearing the baby, so I was trying to be quiet, which is why I wore the mic in the first place. But obviously, here we both are. So, next we're going to do the vanilla. We're doing 2 teaspoons, but I always add a little bit extra just for good measure. You can definitely use imitation vanilla if that's what you have, if that's what you prefer to use. But I'm always going to say use pure vanilla extract. It really does make the difference. Next is going to be a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. You can use light brown sugar or dark brown sugar. Sometimes it's easier to find one or the other in stores, but it doesn't make too much of a difference in this recipe. And for the sake of saving dishes, we're going to keep that 1/4 cup, and then we're going to do a 1/2 cup of white granulated sugar. Obviously, we're just going to use that 1/4 cup twice. So that is all of the wet ingredients except for the egg. I like to give them a mix before adding the egg, just so I don't have to be as worried that there's clumps of sugar that aren't getting worked out, especially when using brown sugar. And also that I'm not having to beat it to death when mixing in my egg to ensure that my egg is fully incorporated. So it kind of just looks like a melted slushy mix at this point. And then I added in the egg. I always make sure to kind of pop the yolk first. That way I don't have to do as much mixing, especially when I'm just using a spatula like this. I didn't really want to get a whisk out. You can if you would like to, or you can use a fork, but I kind of just wanted to stick to the 1 spatula. This part is probably going to be super unpopular, but I also prefer to do my leavening before the majority of the dry ingredients, especially when I'm using baking powder or baking soda, because they do tend to clump, and I want to make sure that there's not going to be clumps in my dough afterwards, because if you've ever tasted a clump of baking powder or baking soda in a baked good, you know how horrific it is, and I don't want that happening when this is supposed to be a quick fix for when I have a little sweet tooth. So with that being said, it is 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I use kosher salt. You can use iodized salt if that's what you have, but kosher salt you're definitely going to actually be able to taste a little bit. So it'll offset some of that sweetness, but if you're not interested in that, maybe use iodized salt or table salt instead. And that's kind of how it's looking with all of the wet ingredients and the leavening. And I honestly didn't have to mix it very much at all, instead of wondering once my flour was in there if there was any hidden clumps of leavening. For a single batch of this recipe, it is 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, which I just went ahead and added all of it at once. And then I'm going to mix it until about 75% of the way incorporated, and then I'm going to add my chocolate chips in, just because I feel when I put chocolate chips in with the flour that it then prevents the flour from fully incorporating. So this is kind of where I'm at, the 75% point. You can see there's still some flour hanging out on the edges of the bowl, and it's not totally incorporated down at the bottom. I saved that 3/4 cup from earlier, and it's going to be, you guessed it, 3/4 cup of chocolate chips, but you can use anywhere from half a cup to a full cup if you prefer. So this is how that dough looks with 3/4 cup of the chocolate chips. I like to use semi-sweet. And don't worry, baby is still around. She's just observing from her bouncer because she woke up. So here's where our second utensil comes in, is a 2-ounce drop scoop, which I love to use for cookies because it makes it immensely easy. I'm going to scoop out all the dough onto the cookie sheet with parchment paper, and I prefer to chill the cookies for about 15 to 20 minutes while my oven preheats, but you definitely can bake these straight after mixing them. They're just going to spread a lot more, but they will still be delicious cookies. But if you want them to be a little taller, go ahead and refrigerate them while you preheat your oven to 350 degrees. The batch ended up making 13.5, I guess, unless you want to make number 13 a monster cookie for the baker. You can also make them any other size if you prefer them smaller or larger, but just know that you're going to have to adjust your cooking time to accommodate for that. Okay, so after they chilled for 15-20 minutes, you can separate out as many as you like. If you want, you can bake all of them, but I just wanted to bake a few of them for a quick afternoon snack for me and my toddler, and of course my husband when he got home. So the ones in the short pan, I ended up freezing as is until they were solid, and then I transferred them to a Ziploc bag for more long-term storage. Not that it's really going to be truly long-term, but so that they don't get freezer burn. Okay, so this is 14 minutes. They start to get golden at the bottom, and that's usually when I pull them. They do still look soft, but seeing that golden brown on the bottom is our sign. So we're just gonna let them cool for a few minutes and then distribute the goods. Yum. Cookies.